Hi, everyone. Hi, good morning. Do I have your attention? Hi. Good morning. Thank you very much for coming to our panel on constructive female founders. My name is Meenal Thakur. I'm a solutions journalism trainer, and I also work for Prague-based Transitions, where I manage their solutions journalism program, and with the Data Center Europe, where I'm also managing their training programs. What brings the four of us here today, other than a very visible passion for short hair, as Dina pointed out when we first met each other, is also our passion and our very strong belief in constructive and solutions journalism, which is rooted in the community to create social impact. And we have with us, I'll go from Ellen. Ellen Henrich, she is the CEO and founder of the Bonn Institute for Journalism and Constructive Dialogue. Then we have Dina Abu Ghazala. She is the founder and CEO of EGAB. EGAB is a media startup that empowers young journalists from across the Middle East and Africa to publish solutions journalism stories in regional and international media. And we have Caterina Carvalho. She is the founder and editor of Mensagem, which is a local and community journalism startup in Lisbon. What we're going to do in these 50 minutes is talk about the journey of these three female founders who have managed to swim upstream in the tide of a male-dominated industry. They have responded to the dire need of reinventing and reimagining journalism at a time when the industry was facing a crisis of trust and disengagement. We'll dig deep into their motivations, into their challenges, their fears, their victories, lessons learned, future plans, and hopefully by the end of it, we would have answered some pressing questions that all of you are here for. The intention would be to hopefully leave the room feeling inspired, but also feeling a bit introspective about how all of us can come together and facilitate female founders and encourage female founders, and how do we create that space for them, which makes this panel necessary and relevant so that we can recognize and celebrate these women and more women around the world who are female founders and are doing some fantastic, impactful work. So zooming out a bit, and Katrina, I will start with you. If we look at the global trends of women and leadership, there was a report by Reuters Institute which came out in March. So it's very recent. And the report analyzes the gender breakdown of top editors in a strategic sample of 240 online and offline news outlets. And these were in 12 different markets across 5 countries. So this is quite global, the sample size. Now, 2 key findings. Only 22% of the 180 top editors across the 240 brands were women. Another fact. Among the 38 new top editors appointed across the brands covered, 26 were women. Now, these figures are very alarming, but sadly not very surprising. It's new reports come in every day, and we are confronted with these very grim figures. We have like-minded people in the room. We are doing our best efforts to work towards diversity and inclusion, but it still remains a very far-fetched goal. But coming to you, Katrina, you have kind of dodged this trend because you have worked in a leadership position for a very long time, and up until 2018, you were even an editor-in-chief. 2020, sorry. You were, exactly, so that's very recent. Thanks for correcting me. And you have been the editor-in-chief. So what really changed? Because you were in a position where you could have ruffled some feathers, you could have made the change that you wanted to. Why did you decide to leave that very secure position and venture into entrepreneurship?
I think you have to, yeah. Okay. Could I?
Yes, please.
Could I change things? I think that was exactly the thing. It had a lot less to do with being a female or a female founder or being a woman in that position. It had a lot to do what you couldn't do in that position regarding the crisis and the way that the administration of the media saw it. So I reached out for the Sembra Media report about independent media all over the world. Now it's made in Europe. And what they say about people starting their own organizations matches exactly what happened to me. Not finding their place in the organization, a desire to be more entrepreneurial than it was permitted in the organization, and more freedom to cover more topics that weren't really allowed. Of course, when you are in a very secure position, I worked at the oldest newspaper in Portugal, which was, our media is always in a crisis. It's more now than it was then, even. But the thing was very traditional media and a bubble, and the way that people are not that willing to innovate. And does that have to do with me being a woman? I'm not sure. It certainly had something to do with me being of a different generation of the people who were, managing the staff, managing the company. It had a lot of coming to these places and learning what people were doing. I've always been involved in INMA, GEN, WANIFRA. I'm part of the WEF's board, the World Editors Forum board. I also did the ONA association in Portugal. So I was aware of what was going on. And what was going on was a trend that, I think that people here can relate to this, is connecting to the communities, exactly what you do, Ellen. And people in Portugal, in the big media, still work for a bubble. For the political bubble, for the economical bubble, and so it came to a point that I couldn't take it anymore. And so they wanted us to explain a little bit of this sad story. They wanted to do a layoff, which is not a layoff in English. It's called it's a redundancy program, and they wanted to downsizing. Yeah, downsizing of half of the newsroom. And me and my colleagues in the leadership, we said, no, this we can't do. This was in the middle of the pandemic, and so I left. Two things that I think helped me, and since this is like a safe space where you can share, two things. I have no kids, so I didn't have that responsibility to think about, and also I think I was lucky enough to be in this position for so long that it gave me a good cushion of economically, a cushion that I could rely on. But then I found, and luck again, or maybe not, I don't know, you will say, I found an entrepreneur in Lisbon who owned a few stores in the city, who I had talked about this idea of having a media connected to the city, connected to the communities in the city. And he said, do you remember that idea? Let's do it. He bought a very famous cafe in downtown. I don't know if you know Lisbon, Brasileira in Chiado. It's the most, beautiful cafe. And he said, let's bring this journalism project to Brasileira. Let's revive this place again. And let's do community journalism. Also, he didn't know what constructive journalism was, of course, because he's doing commerce. But he said, let's change the view that people have of journalism. Let's do inspiring pieces. Let's see how people are doing really good things in the city, which was what I always had wanted to do in journalism. Not because I am a good person, but because I think that's what the people need. Also, this news avoidance that we are seeing is a lot connected to what we do. And if people start not listening to journalism, then it's a big peril. So, to cut a long story short, yes, I left the big media. Yes, it took some courage. We will talk about that later, I bet. And I was lucky enough to do that, to be able to do that. It had a little bit to do with being a woman, and it had a lot to do with the way that journalism is being done by the big media.
Thanks for that very honest answer. I'm sure we can all relate to it. Ellen, you also come from a very similar background. You've worked for a very long time at Deutsche Welle, and up until 2021, which is very recent, you were heading the trends and knowledge there. And while the pandemic happened, actually this is for all of you to know a fun fact that all three of them started their startups in the middle of the pandemic. So it's like the world had come to a standstill. We were very discouraged about the future of journalism. Revenues were not that great, and that is the time when you decided that, you know what, let's do something about it. So I guess that's also very inspiring for all of us. But coming back to you, it's very interesting because, and I would like you to talk a bit also about the philosophy behind Bonn Institute. Mm-hmm. We are here, we're talking about constructive journalism, we're talking about solutions-oriented journalism, but Ellen has this term that she likes to use when she talks about the work that she does, and that is human-friendly journalism. So do you want to tell us what that is, and how is that linked to you being the founder of Bonn Institute?
Yeah. I had a fantastic job at Deutsche Welle. I really loved it. I was able to do innovation in journalism for quite some time. But after having done that for a couple of years, during digitization that challenged us a lot with new tools, new technologies, new platforms, new processes, I had really started to wonder, is technology all that we need to take into account when we talk about digitization in journalism? And that actually happened already a couple of years ago. And then at some point I bumped into a tall Danish guy. His name was Ulrik Hagerup, and he inspired me a lot. He had written the book Constructive, which was all about putting people's interests at the heart of journalism. And that resonated a lot with me because I found that might also be a solution to the problems we're facing with this digitization, because digitization is only successful if you manage to meet the needs of someone, right? Because with digitization, people are able to choose what they want. And what we give them, even as journalists, as media companies, needs to be relevant, it needs to be helpful, it needs to solve problems they're having. So we need to know our audiences very well, and we tried already to meet that demand by, product thinking, design thinking, meeting them on other platforms than before, but that was not it. I still thought we need to do more, we need to get a step further, we need to really understand what are the human needs, and then came news avoidance. It became such a thing. So the first report about news avoidance by the Reuters Institute for the Study of Journalism was released in 2017, talking about news avoidance. And until then, news avoidance just risen. So we definitely not giving people what they need. And that made me really start to want to change that and go a step further. And we already started that in Deutsche Welle. They're actually now pretty advanced and have included constructive journalism in their strategy. I still wanted to go a step further and do more about it, and that's why I started the Bonn Institute, which is all about putting people's needs at the heart of journalism. And then I struggled with the terms, because people were getting like, constructive journalism, so we are the destructive ones, or what are you saying there? So I started to polarize people while I was trying to, bring them together, which was clearly not my intention. So solutions journalism, what's that? That's a part of the constructive mindset. It's a toolbox, right? So that's not the overarching term I was looking for. And then it struck me, and I was like, yeah, maybe we should call it human-friendly journalism, because that's a pretty neat translation of being user-centric. And that's a word that I really hate. It's coming straight from the technological sphere, and it doesn't really resonate with us journalists, because all we want to do is do something for the people. That's what we should do, at least. So I started to work with that, and it seems that this resonates very well with the newsrooms we're working with, because it makes very clear that journalism is a service, and what we do is we are solving user needs. We're doing this in a wide variety of ways. There's no such thing as the one way on how to do it. And that's what we're working on with the Bonn Institute.
Thank you, and also thanks for clarifying this confusion that people have. And I guess all of us can relate to it. Whenever we're at a training at solutions journalism, constructive journalism, even I don't know what to say. And the journalists look at us confused after 1 hour. So what is it? Are these two different things? Are you competitors? We are allies. We are allies. We use terms which are different. Actually, we also call it a response and not a solution for you to know more about the work we do. It is a response to a social problem because we want to shift the focus from just a problem-centric journalism to a solution and a response-oriented, constructive approach to journalism, all these words. But yeah, we are essentially doing the same thing and approaching it from very different places and different geographical contexts as well. And Dina, I would like to bring you in here. You have worked for 14 years for the BBC, a very long time, and in these 14 years you've also worked in different areas from Addis Ababa to London, Cairo, and now with EGAB you're kind of going back home.
Yes.
How has the journey been in terms of has the geographical context been a challenge? And being a female founder in that geographical context, has that been a challenge when you think about what you wanted to create, or the specificities of it in terms of the communities you were serving are very different from what Ellen and Katrina are doing? Is there a big difference, or do you find strength in that?
Thank you. So I think there are similarities and differences. I think female founders across the world are facing similar challenges. I mean, if we look at the data, we already cited some data. I want to cite data when it comes to funding, for example. So EGAB is registered as an LLC in Egypt. So we are a for-profit entity, but we see ourselves as more of a social enterprise. We're a for-profit, but with big on social impact as well. And you find that across the world, the funding between the gap in funding between female founders and male founders is huge. So I'll just cite very few data. So in Europe, 93% of funding, VC funding, went to male founders, while 5% went to mixed teams where there was a male and female founders, and then only 2% went to female. In MENA, in the Middle East and Africa, only 1% of funding went to female founders. So we have a lot of work to do. And the reasons for this, I think there are definitely gender stereotypes in general around like women are not tough enough, to lead a business. And also, I think the lack of role models is also a huge thing. And I hope that our presence here could inspire maybe some of you who are thinking of starting their own ventures. And I think the fact that you are able to see different women who are leading, or also women from different backgrounds, right, and are leading businesses. So growing up in Egypt, the idea, it never crossed my mind that one day I would ever start my own business. Ever. Look, the idea was always that in order to start your own business, you have to come from a wealthy family where you inherit the money, and and I was just a normal family, right? I mean, like a middle-class family, and I'm privileged that my parents sent me to private schools, and that's why I'm able to speak English. So my ability to speak English itself is a reflection of a privilege, right? So I recognize my privileges, but at the same time, and I think this is where, honestly, I think tech, we always speak about tech, how it had some downside, but tech is empowering, because without tech, I wouldn't have been able to launch EGAB from my home, right, and be present in 30 countries, because we run a 100% remote operation thanks to tech. So I think growing up also not seeing, women who do not come from wealthy background, come from normal backgrounds, leading their own businesses, does affect the fact that women feel, oh, I can't do this. But we also have to think historically, because if you think of why do men are able to be more investors or lead their own businesses? Because how it works is that men were hired as CEOs and in top executive roles for so long, they were able to collect or save a lot of money that they decided at one point to, okay, enough, I'm now done as a president of whatever, and now I'm going to use this money to launch my own startup or invest. Because historically, women never reached that level. So this also creates a gap in your financial ability to be able, that you've collected or saved enough money that enables you to go and to be able to invest or create your own startup. And if we're saying this about Europe, you can imagine for Middle East and Africa. And as I said, I do not represent, if you're like, Egypt is a huge country, and the Middle East is a huge region, and Africa is a huge continent. I represent like a minority of a minority, okay? So there are still many women who do not enjoy financial inclusion. Many women who rely on spouses for money, and that's why, honestly, so Katrina mentioned that it was a privilege for her, or it was a source of freedom to take that decision because she doesn't have children. I have children, I have 2 children, I'm married, but I have a very supportive spouse, and that's why when I have young females coming up to me, Arab females, asking me for advice, I say, if starting a family is something that's a priority for you, which is fair enough, make sure you make a very wise decision. Because the choice of your partner, the choice of your spouse, plays a huge role of whether you will have a smooth journey to realize your career ambitions, like it or not, okay? This is the reality of things. And again, I was so lucky that I found someone that was very supportive and that was able to support me throughout my career. So we also have to think historically, and also the cultural context of that. Many women don't have their own financial independence, and that affects their ability. And also, just very quickly, even when you go in meetings with potential investors, in addition to all, as I said, the general stereotypes that apply to everyone from Europe, US, Middle East, Africa, but also in the context of the Middle East, as an Arab, Muslim, African woman, okay, I get judged based on how I look. So that immediately, so people would judge how conservative, religious, whatever I am, whether I'm a decent woman, indecent, whatever, all the conclusions they want to, reach based on how I look. This does not happen to men. If a man chooses just like working in shirt and trousers, it's very difficult to really understand where he does. While in the Arab world, they already categorize you and make a decision of whether they want to work with you based on just simply how you look. Thank you.
Can I add something to that? On a more constructive tone, I totally understand, and I'm going to speak about Portugal, which is a very different situation in terms of even ethnicity, because we have dealt with African communities for a long time because of our dreadful past and stuff, but yeah, they are there. And what I see when we are working with these more, underprivileged communities, which we are at Mensagem, is that the female part is also very much nuanced, because the girls with whom we work with, they are underprivileged, but they have such power, such force. They want to change the world. And for instance, we are working with 7 young people from not a shanty, a social housing neighborhood, and the girls are the best, and they are the most driven, they are the most focused. It's amazing to see that, and I think the world is changing. Yesterday we were at Charlotte is there. We were at the Sole restaurant, and it was like there were like 4 men in the whole room, which I thought, yeah, the world is changing.
Actually, Ellen, I don't know if you want to quickly add, because when we were talking about money, I remember you also made this point about entrepreneurship, and because I'm mindful of time, but I would really like you to respond to it, because you also said that either this comes from the family, or it's a skill that's also like passed on, it's kind of, is it inheritance, or someone who really wants to venture into it is completely clueless of what to do, and how do you want to quickly respond to that?
I actually couldn't agree more to what you just said, Dina. Normally, women just are not in the position to easily start their own thing, because they are either too much absorbed in family work. For instance, I'm a single mother of 2 children, and I had just no chance to even just think about doing my own thing until they are now slowly moving out of my home, right? So that gave me, for the first time in almost 20 years, the space to think about and really do something about what I really want to do. Also, single parents rarely get rich, even if they even if they got really good jobs, and I had a very good job, right? So that was also something that resonated very much with me, and not from a wealthy background either. So it wasn't natural for me to also, think about myself as a potential founder, as a CEO. It was such a long way, and I was lucky to have really good friends. Some of them being psychologists and counseling me, some of them are in the room, and really encouraging me that I can do it. But I mean, actually, until now, I very often don't believe that I can do it. So actually this morning when I woke up, I was like, okay, you are here for a reason. It's okay. And about finances, so I was very lucky that our regional state government really bought into the idea I was presenting to them, because others didn't. Like, I also approached foundations, and I had kind of sometimes pretty disrespectful conversations with altruist, founders. And I sensed it was also because of me. So one time I thought it was because of my red shoes that he looked at, and I was like, no, but now I also think money is not easy for us to talk about. And I'm learning. And one thing that I have really learned is that what we are doing is valuable. And that's why I always ask for money when we're working with media companies. And some say, yeah, but you're doing it for the good sake, aren't you? I said, yeah. And it's valuable for your own business as well.
Yeah. I want to go into your business models. I guess people are also interested in knowing how you run, what are the economics of what you do, and getting a bit into also the logistics of managing your ventures. And Katrina, you mentioned, you were talking about these fantastic, fearless, driven girls who you work with, and community is really at the heart of what you do. Coming from a corporate media yourself, where I guess community is a customer to the media, they're like a number in your subscription model, and you've done something different. So how do you deal with cultivating a community and sustaining it, even and strengthening it? How does it work for you?
Yeah, I think yesterday people were talking about impact just by telling the stories that nobody tells, about the people nobody talks about, and the places where nobody goes. And this was what happened at the beginning. So let me explain a little bit more. So we formed Mensagem de Lisboa, that's the surname. And what we tried to do was to fill a gap, to fill an information gap that there was in Lisbon and for the Lisboans, which are, by the way, many different communities. And our motto was to enhance empathy through knowledge, because we feel that if nobody knows anybody in their community, then you can't be empathic, because you don't know the problems they are getting or the good things they are doing. And so we started very smoothly to talk about the people in the city. And the people, there's no story and Mensagem that doesn't have people in it. So it's about persons, people specifically, or about people in the communities, or about, we don't cover politics, not at all. And this kind of takes us away from the kind of investigative journalist of the wag the dog thing, and but it kind of has given us power in terms of what these people are really doing to change their city. So it's a kind of a civic information website, and inspiring information. And this has created a community, and we asked the people who follow us, who are members and stuff, what do you value most at Mensagem? And they said it's the inspiration. It's the, I know there's this user needs there's a model of user needs that Dmitry Shishkin is bringing to these conferences, and he has already spoken here. And this inspirational thing, it's tricky because it's, I mean, you just, how do you enhance inspiration? You can't do it marketing-wise, because otherwise you will lose your authenticity. Yeah. So you have to keep on doing what this is, which is telling the stories. Then we also talk to people a lot, like we do newsletter. Our newsletters are very personal. They are not, this is what you should read. No, this is like what we've done. Like our newsletter now, 2 more people from Mensagem are here at the festival, 2 young girls, 23 and 27, we brought them in, and they wrote the newsletter because people need to know what the newsroom is doing also. We are part of that community. And we also do events, not as some other, not very big events. We do a lot of meetings in the cafe. We do like walkings in the city. We are trying to do a festival. It's not easy. The economical situation in Portugal is not very good now, so it's bad for small media. And this is what we are trying to do. We are trying to bring other partners in the city, and especially thinking about business models. There's no foundations in Portugal that give money to journalism. And there's no state government or whatever, municipality money to grab for journalism. Journalism is seen as something that shouldn't be sponsored by the government or the state, because, although we are a very old country, it's a very new democracy, only 50 years old. So there's this, this bias against giving money to the media. So this is something that we have to tackle. And what we started to do is to do projects with companies. And this is a counsel that I got, an advice that I got when I was starting Mensagem, and the guys from Tourtoise in UK said that if there was something they would have done differently in the beginning of what they did, was to bring companies inside the business model. Because you can't rely, in Portugal also, people don't pay for news, so people don't, it's very hard to get people to pay for a membership or for being part of this community. They feel part of the community. We have 15,000 members of the newsletter that receive the newsletter, 44% of opening rate, which is a lot, but they don't pay. So we are working to have companies with us. How? Like Dina said, showing social impact. We are doing this project with the young kids from this neighborhood. We have other projects to do the metropolitan area and covering of spaces that are now news deserts. And we are bringing companies to be with us. The drawback of this is that we are competing in the same companies with other media that are much bigger than we are. So we have to do, it's hard, and that's where the imposter syndrome comes, where you start to question what you're doing, if you're doing it right, if you should maybe do something differently. And yeah, so that's our business model is exactly that, the community, but in these different forms.
Yeah. And if you're talking about the question of funding for you, because you already mentioned the not so very encouraging funding situation where you come from, so let's get this straight. Funding is difficult for both men and women. It's not just like women are struggling with funding. Funding is an issue, a very big problem in the media industry, and how do we sustain it? But it seems like talking about funding could be easier for men compared to women, and I'm risking it by generalizing, but it is a fact that there is a very strong toxic culture in which there's still a bias of accepting women in leadership positions. There's also, women are constantly, is my leadership style very strong? Is it too assertive? Do I need to be softer? How do I approach when how do I approach a funder? Or do you think along the way how women are perceived, have we started seeing ourselves in the same way? Is there a discomfort when you're talking about money, even though you know that your pitch is, there's impact, you've done what you could do, and you should be asking for what you deserve? But do you also struggle with it a bit, and then also feeding into how do you look at funding, and then I'm also being a bit mindful of time, but I think it's important to talk about this.
So yes, definitely. Oh my God, I was so uncomfortable speaking about money. I think it's the way we're raised as well. I don't know. We're more givers. I mean, in my culture, as women, we give. We don't ask for things. So this is the problem. I would be very happy to help people when they approach me, but I would be more reluctant to ask for help because I don't want to be, you know, maybe he will not or she will not be want to help. So, and this, of course, comes to money. Also, my culture, if you're speaking about cultural nuances, in my culture, it's talking about money is not a comfortable conversation at all. I mean, the new generations, I can see this is changing. So even in salary, you would be shy to negotiate a higher raise. So whatever, it just feels like, you know, it depends how you value me. I will not ask you to put like a number. And I think this is, we're trying, I've seen a lot of people trying to change this on social media. No, you have to ask. If you don't ask, you'll never receive, right? So yes, so this answer, and I just want to go a bit backward. I'm mindful of time, sorry. I'll just explain a bit of context. So, because when I come to, I always joke with my friends that I feel it's a bit schizophrenic for me, because I mean, when I come to media conferences like this one, the whole focus is on impact, and everyone seems to be like, wanting to be, oh, so you're for profit? Oh, you're greedy then. You have to, everyone has to be for not-for-profit. And for me, it's like, I have to explain how it's so difficult in Egypt to register a not-for-profit. It's extremely complicated process that is subject to a lot of security scrutiny. But it's almost unheard of to register a media not-for-profit in my country context. And then I stepped into the tech world, right, as a founder of a media startup that uses tech to enable her model. And then the conversation is all about the money. Money. And they're looking at high multiples, and I'm like, oh my God, slow down a bit. Can we balance between money and impact? And I feel like torn between this, and I'm still trying hard to find the space in the middle. And I recently joined an accelerator that was not just for media, for all tech startups across, any tech startup across the Middle East, where you have to apply. And I was telling me now, so we were 15 startups, only 4 of us were women, female founders, the rest were male founders. And during the sessions and when we had guest speakers, you can see from the type of questions that although the 4 of us female founders, we already had products in the market, we had our models were working, we had revenue, we had traction, while many of the male founders, their products were not launched in the market, they still didn't have any traction in revenue. And yet, the confidence they were speaking in was dazzling. While the common thing between the 4 of us was like, when we asked questions, we were seeking validation. We were still like, we're not sure, do you think this will work? And I don't know why this is happening, but you always feel, I think it's imposter syndrome, you always think, but maybe this will not work. You have this voice inside you. And I think, yes, this definitely affects your ability to ask, because you need to, when you have this conversation with investors, you have to give them the confidence that, of course, if I put money, I'm going to get high returns. And because we're so mindful and already you're kind of like, yeah, I would like to support this, we're not able to sell this big dream, while men are just like, yeah, of course, I'm the next Uber. Of course, you put money in me, and then next Elon Musk, and just I'll end here. And I think it's also a conversation that funders should be aware of. Is that because most of the foundations would only want to fund not-for-profit without understanding the context of enterprises working in different countries. I can only speak about my own country. I'm sure every country has its own nuances. But in my own country, you have to understand that it's impossible to have this. So that's why you need to be flexible and try to work with people who are trying to make impact within the context of the laws and the restrictions that they have.
Ellen, to you, and then I want to open it up for questions. I'm sure we have many. Just continuing this conversation, and when I remember for dinner we were talking about money, and you made this statement, and you said that no, of course we should not rely on grants. And I was a bit surprised and shocked because I work for a non-profit, and if I don't have grants, I don't have a job. So I was like, okay, if this is the way we have to approach things, how will we sustain it? How this constant proving of impact and business and balancing it, and how did it go for you? And I guess a bit of a personal but hopefully relatable question, does it also get lonely in this journey of looking and scouting and managing on the end, and it's just...
Yeah, the first question about grants. We're a non-profit as well, the Bonn Institute, and I can also only answer your question for the Bonn Institute because every NGO is, of course, very different, and some of them do rely on grants, and please don't reduce grants. Also, we are looking for grants.
That's the thing, you're forced
we're expanding, and in a purpose-driven organization like ours, we do also have and want to work with people giving us grants. That's for sure. At the same time, we're also working with established media companies, and we're offering them our services, and we've proven that these services are very valuable. They pay off. We are a purpose-driven organization, so our services pay off for society. At the same time, they also make these established media companies' journalism more valuable in a sense, as I try to explain, that they are like getting better to serve the problems their users or their audiences have. And that's for sure essential in order for them to stay relevant in the future. I'm very much convinced that if we don't, listen to our audiences and try to really answer their needs, then journalism won't be relevant in the future anymore, let's face it. So when there's somebody like us having some answers for media companies who are struggling on their way to the future, then this should be paid for, right? So, simple. At the other question about loneliness, yes, definitely. I remember our first meeting, a Zoom meeting, and somebody said that it can get so lonely, can't it? And that resonated so deeply with me, because there's so many things as a founder, and that's not just for female founders. There's so many things you're facing and you're struggling with, and that demand answers from you, and that they're totally new to you. You know some stuff from the long career that we've already had, but there's so much more that you don't know anything about. And I found it really valuable to now have this little group. And actually, since the announcement of that panel was out there on the internet, so many female founders have contacted me, so important to join forces and to have a safe space to also, support each other, because this is definitely missing until now. And that would definitely help, I guess, against the loneliness that sometimes is really inherent in that position as a founder.
We have 8 minutes left, and I do want to ask all of you for, one line each about what do you want to say about aspiring female founders, or some tips, but I have a feeling I might be stealing your questions, I guess, if you might also want to ask the same. Should we open the floor for questions? Do we have anyone? Do we have any questions? Yeah.
So I would like to ask...
Sorry, now I feel that I don't want to steal your final sentences. So I just wanted to ask you, mental health in journalists is something that we are, aware more and more. And so I would like to ask you if you feel that, I don't know if it's because you're a female or not, but in the organizations that you started, if you're, if that's something that you're, taking care of, and if so, which good practices do you have that are different from the, the newsrooms that we usually know, right?
That's a very good question. Do you want someone to specifically answer it, or?
I could try to answer that. I'm very mindful of this situation. I've also history with in burnout, severe burnout myself, and So I know that a safe and mindful work environment does really matter. Also, we are a very diverse team with people having also, families to cater for and other things that are also in our lives and that are also very important. So we try to be as flexible as possible, also when it comes to presence at the workspace, for instance, or remote work is something we practice. Another thing is we always take time to also bond as a team. So we meet once a month for a work sprint. We are a role-based organization, so we take time to appreciate what we've done. We also take time to bury certain ideas. We take time to just talk and eat together. So it's not about creating a family or something like that, but to create a healthy balance where everybody feels seen and also valued with the work they're doing.
My question would be about leadership. The higher you get as a woman, I think the harder it gets because there's little women whom you can learn from and openly and safely talk to, especially when it comes to questions of funding, mental health, money, struggles with men and in the male-dominated field. So the question would be, did you find mentors in your area, which I think is also very amazing but specific? Where did you find them as well?
Can I be disruptive about that? You can find men who are mentors too. And that's a very big thing for me, I think. I never asked any woman for advice on, being a female founder or something like that. You may blame me for this, but I always talk to men or women independently of who they are. And this is something that I think it's good for us also not to put ourselves in this role of being different. We are not different. Well, we are different. We are not superior or inferior. We are just different. And so there's no reason why you shouldn't ask for advice with men. I think that's something that I did. I have lots of men friends and they are in higher positions and I always ask them for that. Or women. I have some friends who are also CEOs and stuff and I ask them also. But it's like, not because they are men or something different. Yeah.
Yeah, sure. I don't know if you also meant in terms of, do you empathize more with a female founder and you can seek advice from whoever?
Not specifically because I cannot bond with men, but just because I don't want to be looked at, from a downside perspective. I want to have a professional relationship, and if that man sees me as this young girl,
but then if he does that, then he's not a mentor. Then you have to, no. I'm talking about people who treated me equally, of course. No, yeah.
So yeah, definitely ask for advice from everyone. But to answer your question about the female, don't underestimate the advice you get from your peers. Mm-hmm. So when we had on the first, so we only met over Zoom, and then when the first day when we arrived, we had a dinner together, and we just kept sharing exactly the struggles with funding, and each one of us kept telling the other, oh, you should talk to that one, I will make the introduction, and then, oh, you should talk to that one. So we, among ourselves, have been sharing knowledge, but this is something that you can even start from now. And I came to realize this later. I believe in the concept of the generous networker. I didn't realize that this is something that I was doing until later on in my career, because exactly when you start off, you think, I know no one. And this was all my feeling. Who am I? I'm just this young journalist in Cairo. I know, and I always looked up to these people who have connections. But because whenever, when you're generous, so with my colleagues in the office, I was like, yeah, you should do this, you should do that. And then I realized as years passed by, these became my network. And actually I realized that one day, 10 years passed, this happened. I was like, wow, I have former colleagues who are now editors at AFP, who are now editors, I don't know, at Deutsche Welle. And this was very empowering. And so this is don't underestimate the power of your peers and start now. And don't think about it, oh, I'm giving you this year advice now because I expect something from you later. No, just give it. It will come back. It doesn't necessarily have to come back from the same person, but you'll find someone else who's coming your way and helping you. So just be generous and share your advice, and we're doing this to each other. And where to find them? LinkedIn is a great tool. I love LinkedIn now. I don't know, I find people, I connect with them, message us, please. We're happy to help.
We have 1 minute left. I don't know if
we have like 3 questions.
Yeah, we take one and then we continue the conversation outside.
Just a quick comment, not exactly a question. First of all, I think this is very inspiring. Thank you so much. Not a female founder, but a queer founder, and I think the journey is so similar because I run the Queer Muslim Project, and I think what Dina was saying is that even in the context of India, right, when you register a not-for-profit, it's just so difficult to raise money because of the compliances and the laws and the constant government scrutiny. So I think we've also had to register a private limited company on the side. And the challenge is, I think, very similar because within the development sector, there is a certain kind of lens with which funding is provided, right? And then when you're breaking the box, when you're telling stories of communities in a different way, I think it's just so difficult. And I think the loneliness is real. And I think, you know, I found this conversation very, very inspiring. Thank you so much. Yeah,
Thank
just
you.
wanted to say that.
I would say, as a fellow Indian, I empathize. It's 10:50. And it's a beautiful comment to end this session with. Thank you so much for that. And thank you all for being here. I hope, as we aimed, you left feeling inspired, and we can continue talking. Thank you very much for being here. And thank you, Trish.
Thank you.
I couldn't miss this one.
Good? Yeah, right? It was good, right?